Hello, everyone.
Hi, Jeff.
Hello.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Okay.
Jeff, this is Nord. How's my sound level?
Your sound is fine.
Okay.
Valerie. Hi, Valerie. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Who was on the phone?
Me, Catherine.
Catherine Sampson.
Yep.
I was actually confirming for Valerie.
I'm
Thank you.
sorry.
That's okay.
Okay.
Jeff and Mark and Luther. Me. And we're bringing in 1, 2, and Nord. 8. I don't know if Michael, when he was on, or if others were on, Michael had a personal issue, so he's recording the session, but he'll be getting back to us in the next by 30 minutes in or so. So if you're seeking his input, you'll have to wait until after that point. We'll give it another minute here. Bless you, Nord.
Well, thank you.
Okay, so I don't see Richard, Jerry, Doug, John.
Doug will be with us in a moment.
Okay, great.
Luther, good to see you back on board.
Hey, Nord, good to see you. Thanks.
Yeah. You were so good with the old regs. Now we got all new regs.
Yeah, but I had some input on those too, so I think I'm familiar.
Good.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you. Doug just messaged me that he's not being let into the meeting. Is that because Michael has control of it and can't join us? Oh, there he is.
Oh, there he is. He should be able to get in.
Hmm.
I was worried about that too, whether it was Zoom or whether it was going to be GoToMeeting, because we had that issue last time. And Doug. Whoops, Doug is here. Okay. Wait for him to get connected to audio, and then we'll go from there. I feel like I'm slowly fading away with this background or something I have. Got some clear spots through me. Hello, Doug. Can you hear us?
Yes, Doug's here.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. So, with that, we will start the, we're already recording. We'll start the November 8th, 2021 Town of Ashford Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, the regular meeting, and it is 7:04 by my clock. So we will get going. We will start with the seating of alternates. And in this case, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Whoops, move over here. 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so it looks like we will seat both Doug and Luther. We'll seat Doug for Jerry Dufresne, and we will seat Luther for Richard Williams.
Jerry Dufresne.
Oh, Jerry Dufresne is on. Okay.
Yep.
So I take that back. Doug, we're going to keep you as an alternate. Obviously, you are welcome to be in the discussion. You just won't be a voting member tonight. And we'll maintain Luther as filling in for Richard Williams. Okay. And what I would like to do, I'm going to ask for, well, actually, we'll skip on that. We'll come back to that. That's fine. We'll deal with that later. Looking for approval of the minutes from October 12th, 2021 regular meeting. Any comments,
Motion.
issues? Sorry, Jerry.
Motion to accept.
I'll second that, Jeff.
Jerry and Jeff Schillinger seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Abstentions?
I abstain from that.
I'll also abstain.
Okay, Nord and Luther. Thank you, gentlemen. Excuse me, I have to get rid of the dog squeaking a toy behind me. Ugh. Get out of here. It's only come out of meeting that he's doing that. Okay. All right, so the motion passes, accept the minutes. Again, Valerie, thank you. You did a great job with all 3 hearings. Thank you for covering all of that. You're on mute, Valerie. I can't hear you.
Who else abstained other than Mr. Baruch?
That's Brosh,
Brosh, okay, well,
Brosh.
who else abstained?
Nord Yakulov.
Okay,
Okay, thank you. We have open for public comments for any of the agenda items tonight. I see we have Mr. Krieger joining. I don't know if he had anything specific or he's just listening in.
No, I'm just listening in. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can't just sit in the back of the audience. We have your name up here. That's what happens. Okay, Alex, any bills?
No, we have any bills? No bills.
No bills. Okay, moving on to correspondence. Regarding correspondence, one, everyone did receive the updated list of members from Alex coming off of the November 2nd elections. And I congratulate all that have joined us. We'll talk about that coming up in our next section, but we'll go through the correspondence first. The correspondence we received on November 4th from the Ashford Lake Property Owners Association. I will read it into the record. This is proposed Lake District regulations. Dear Mr. Silversmith and PZC members. The ALPOA Board of Directors thanks you for the opportunity to provide input on the proposed Lake District regulations. After completing the questionnaire, reviewing the draft proposal, and listening to comments at the public hearing, we would like to offer some observations and recommendations for your consideration prior to finalization of the new regs. According to our association bylaws, Article 2B, we are charged with promoting and fostering environmental awareness and protection for Ashford Lake. In our questionnaire responses, we asserted the importance of protecting water quality, both surface water and groundwater, within our association as our primary concern insofar as zoning regulations are concerned. The proposed regulations have defined a lake district as the properties lying within the bounds of the Ashford Lake and Lake Chaffee associations, and tailored the new regulations to apply to properties within those limits only. It is our feeling that this definition is too simplistic and inadequate in terms of creating regulations designed in part to protect water quality and environmentally sensitive areas. Properties beyond the lake association boundaries contribute significantly to water quality issues, at least in the case of Ashford Lake. While both Ashford Lake and Lake Chaffee share many common characteristics, they are not alike with regard to topography and density. We are therefore recommending that the regulations either be amended to expand the area defined as a lake district, or that in the case of Ashford Lake, an overlay zoning district be considered to achieve the intent of the proposed Lake District regulations, including the same provisions regarding permitted uses, special permit uses, and lot standards, i.e. building setbacks, impervious surface reduction, and low impact design. The rationale for any overlay district was clearly articulated in October 7th, 2021 letter, which was shared with the commission from the law firm of Robinson and Cole on behalf of one of our association members. We fully support the opinion expressed in that letter and would like to offer some additional perspective in support of the case for the creation of an overlay zoning district. In July and August of this year, several of our residents on Ashford Lake Drive experienced serious property damage when successive severe storms overwhelmed our drainage system. Because we need to make costly modification improvements to prevent the likely reoccurrence of this situation, given prevailing weather trends, we consulted with 3 civil engineers about remediation. Based on the post-storm conditions and observable topography, their consensus was that our problems originate not from the properties in the immediate vicinity, but from a larger drainage area extending beyond the boundaries of the association. The commission's limited definition of the Lake District fails to take this larger drainage area into account, and we feel strongly that the commission needs to take a broader view. This larger drainage area consists of properties on North Road, Camper Lane, and the Ashford section of the Lake Woods Lane subdivision at the north end of the lake. Much of this land, it should be noted, particularly parcels on Camper Lane and the entirety of the Lakewood subdivision, were originally owned by Ashford Lake Incorporated. Had these lands not been subdivided and sold off over time, they would be property of the Ashford Lake Property Owners Association today, and would be considered part of the Lake District as defined by the commission and subject to the new proposals regulations. The change in ownership and boundaries has not changed the topography. If not bound by the definition applied to the Lake District, it would seem logical and reasonable to regard these properties as part of the drainage area impacting Ashford Lake. The Ashford Lake Property Owners Association invests significant resources to enhancing our drainage system and protecting our water quality, but certain problems areas remain. And most of these areas involve the properties that would fall within the drainage area that an overlay district could regulate. In severe storms, such as those of this past summer, for example, runoff from Camper Lane carries sediment-laden stormwater directly into the lake, causing turbidity that takes weeks to dissipate. The town of Ashford has taken some much appreciated, though ineffective measures to eliminate this problem, which requires a more imaginative approach, more resources, and we contend regulations and overlay zoning district would provide. We appreciate your efforts to create regulations that streamline the process by which the lake residents can maintain and improve their properties. We also urge you to consider our observations or recommendations regarding an expansion of the Lake District as currently defined, or creation of an overlay zoning district to support our efforts to mitigate adverse impacts from the larger Ashford Lake drainage area and to protect our water quality. Sincerely, Thomas P. Berry, President, Ashford Lake Property Owners Association Board of Directors. Everyone, that is part of the materials that Mike provided also, so everyone does have access to a copy of that letter for the meeting materials too. I would take any brief comments regarding that at this time. Luther, go right ahead.
Are we going to do a more detailed discussion of that later in the agenda items regarding the unfinished revision?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll wait for that then. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
I'll wait as well. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. We can take it under advisement then. I should have just gone with that anyways. Okay, so item number 6, we're discussing the introduction of newly elected commission members. And again, those that have joined us, Doug Jenny has returned. He was an incumbent, has returned as an alternate. Doug, thank you very much. I'm not going to make you give us your CV. That's fine. I see John Calarese has not been able to join us. We have had some problems getting a hold of him and providing information. Alex has tried numerous times to get that to him. So we'll work through the town clerk's office, which we've already tried once, but to get a hold of John for the future meetings. And also joining us, again, congratulations, is Luther Brosh joining us from a previous life with the commission. Luther, I don't know if you wanted to share anything about your background for those who aren't familiar with your
Sure.
biography.
Yeah, that's fine. Glad to be here. My wife and I moved to town about 11 years ago now. We are up on the Mansfield border on Wormwood Hill Road. We've got the, moderate small farm up here. served on planning and zoning several years ago and enjoyed it. I have a background in construction. I just spent 6 years with Public Works for the town of Mansfield, so I understand a lot about stormwater management and site plans and permitting and technical language. So I'm hoping that I can contribute in a meaningful way and really look forward to the process.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Luther. So by our bylaws, I would like to ask that someone, by our bylaws, we're supposed to have election of officers with the meeting following the biennial elections. So I'd like to have someone make a motion to under, I guess, 6A or 6B, to add to the agenda that we have the election of our commission officers for this meeting.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Who moved? If you would just please say
Jeff.
your name.
Jerry Dufresne.
Gary Dufresne moved, Janet Bellamy seconded.
Okay,
Okay, all those in favor of adding this to the agenda at this time?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Abstentions? Okay, so again, by our bylaws, we can have a vote because we have 9 voting with the alternates here. We have at least 9 voting members of our quorum. So it allows us to have a vote on this. So we are looking for, we will start with secretary. And it needs to be a full board member, not an alternate on here, but obviously the alternates can vote in this because they've been seated. We're looking for a nomination for, I don't know if it's called recording secretary. How about just commission secretary, which is what Alex takes care of at the present time. Do I hear a nomination?
It's
Alex
Jan.
Costello.
Okay, so that was Jerry. Was that Jerry
Yes.
nominating?
Yes.
Okay, so Jerry nominated Alex.
It's Janet. I'll second.
Janet seconded. Are there any other nominations? Can I have a motion to close nominations for secretary?
Motion to close.
Jerry motions to
Dufresne.
close. Thank you.
Second, Jeff.
Seconded by Jeff Schillinger. All those in favor of closing nominations for secretary?
Aye.
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 Okay. All those opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. Okay, so with that, do I have a, I don't think I have to ask you, Alex, but Alex, if you were to get the nomination, would you accept it?
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor of having Alex Castillo as our continuing as recording secretary?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Abstentions? Unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Alex.
You're welcome.
Okay. Now we're looking for vice chair. Vice chair is currently held by Richard Williams. Do I hear a nomination for vice chair?
I'll nominate Richard Williams. I'll
Okay.
second that, Jeff.
And Jeff Schillinger seconds that. That was Nord with the original, Valerie.
just a minute. Richard Belize,
No, Richard Williams.
Williams.
who seconded it?
And that was Jeff Schillinger.
Okay,
Any other nominations? I nominate Janet Bellamy.
I'll second that. Luther Brauk.
Any other nominations?
who seconded it?
Luther. Okay, can I get a motion for nominations to be closed for vice chair?
So moved.
That was Alex. Seconded,
Second.
second by Jeff Schillinger. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Unanimous. Okay, so I'm looking for a vote for. Well, let's see, how many members wish to vote Richard Williams as vice chair? What members, I should say? And those for Janet?
Here.
Aye. Aye.
I,
Aye, Catherine. Aye.
So I just need to get a count for Valerie, so it's probably, okay, I've got Luther, how do you vote?
yeah, in the affirmative for Janet.
Okay, thank you. I vote for the affirmative for Janet. Mark?
Aye.
Affirmative for Janet. Nord?
Aye, Janet.
1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry.
Alex for Janet.
Yeah, 5. Jeff?
Aye for Janet.
Aye for Janet. And Doug Jenny.
Doug's not seated.
Doug's not
Does that
seated. I'm
matter?
sorry. His name's sitting up here.
I'm not
Sorry, Doug.
seated. Yeah, I can vote.
Gotcha. And Jerry?
Janet.
Okay. So Janet is vice chair.
You didn't ask me if
Congratulations,
I'd accept it.
Janet. You
You
have
noticed that.
try.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Okay. And now for chairman.
I nominate Jeff
Jeff.
Silversmith.
I'll
Second.
second that.
That was Alex and then Luther. Valerie?
Yep.
I'll get you, Alex. Any other nominations?
I move nominations be closed. Jerry Dufresne.
Jerry
Second.
Dufresne, seconded by Alex. All those in favor of closing nominations?
Aye.
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 Unanimous. Okay, all those voting for Jeff Silversmith as chair.
Aye.
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 Seeing as that there were no other nominations, so goes. It's been approved, Chairman. Thank you all. Thank you all for that tedious little exercise we have to do every couple of years. So thank you. We won't ask for acceptance speeches or anything like that. We'll just let that go this time. Okay. Moving on to unfinished business. And again, we're doing the review of the Lake District regulation revisions. We'll do as best we can without Mike here. So if I can find the material from rentals. Here we go, Lake District. Okay, so based on some of the input we've received through the hearing, we did go and look to make some changes from the input from the letter that's mentioned in Mr. Barry's letter from Robinson and Cole. And I guess if there was a time to comment while it's fresh in our heads here, I'll start with Luther. You were going to make some comments regarding either what was just said to us or something else?
Yeah, so maybe questions to seek answers to. So it sounds like one of the principal concerns, at least from Ashford Lake, is surface water management and discharge. And specifically with an eye towards water quality of the body of water. And I guess this is my own ignorance because I don't get up that way all that much, but are the roadways up there owned by the property ownership association, or are the roadways owned by the town?
Property Owners Association owns them.
And is that all the properties sort of east of North Road and south of Campert Lane, or does that also include Campert Lane?
It includes the lower, about the lower half of Campert Lane.
So after Campert Drive.
Yes.
Okay, great. So look, just what comes through from that for me is if there's surface water issues in terms of how the town or how the Public Works is discharging water from points of collection, then that's certainly something that the town could probably look at and the like. But I think a lot of that actually falls under the purview of inland wetlands. Once those structures are built, that's not even really something that we have, unless I'm mistaken, that we have a tremendous amount of sway over. We can set out guidance, which I think is what they're getting to, is setting out guidance for new development, how water is managed. But I don't know that we can do a lot with existing troubles that they're seeing.
Well, I will say that inland wetlands did, I don't know what the terminology is, but they did require the Lake Association to do some remediation, which it has done, except the Campert Lane remediation we need to do. I'm part of I live on the Lake Association. The Campert Lane work we have to do is dependent on the town doing their work uphill on Campert Lane.
I can understand that for sure. So, but I guess I'm looking for clarity, and I don't know who can give it. Is that the direction that this letter was sending us? Is that they want more language included in the revision that specifically addresses surface water runoff, infiltration, retention, and the like? Because there doesn't appear to be any language currently in the revision other than talking about buildable space and pervious and impervious structures. There's no actual call outs for how surface water is re-infiltrated back into the ground. And is that something we need to look at?
Well, under the, and thank you for that, Luther. Yeah, as you said, that falls under the purview. Most of that would fall under the purview, especially what their requests fall to would be inland wetlands and dealing with that. For our purposes, yes, the pervious surface, the allowable impervious surface, and requests of structures that sorry, the word you just used, basically having the water going back into the ground as opposed to running off into the lake is some of the requirements we're finding under the current standards that Mike has helped us put together. And I agree that, with your first point there, water quality is one of the issues for doing these regs. I mean, the other issues we had to do with structures, the buildings, the things that fall under our purview, and trying to make it so that the group just doesn't have any type of regulation to go by, and thus simply applying regulations that don't fit, such as for the regular RA zones, and then having to go to zoning board of appeals seeking a variance. I can tell you that one of the pieces that came back from, if you look back at the minutes previously on this, was one of the things that Janet brought up had to do with not, in a nutshell, boiled down, not having to have an engineering review or survey done in order to put a storage shed up on your lot that meets the setback requirements as per the new regs. And I think that's what some of the information that Mike has added to this when it comes to lot coverage. If you look at section, if you have it in front of you, you have section 7 under lot coverage, and it's section B. The following improvements shall not be included in an impervious coverage calculation. Detached accessory building of 200 square feet or less, which include a roof, gutter / rain leader collection system that does not discharge runoff on top of the ground. Attached or detached decks, which do not include a roof and are open to the ground. Pervious surfaces which allow for water absorption and do not convey runoff, including pervious driveways, walkways, and patios. So I think he tried to address that issue that was brought up in making it more convenient, and again, not the requirement of a full engineering survey in order for someone to have some changes done to their lot, no matter how small it is. So to that end, Janet, you had a statement also that you were looking to make?
Well, I just wanted to add that to Luther that when we presented the original Lake District regulation changes at our Lake Association meeting and later at a planning and zoning meeting, a number of lake residents felt that it wasn't enough just to limit the impervious surface to people in the Lake District. It should be in the whole watershed. And that's part of what his letter is about. I just wanted to, so I liked what Mike did with adding it. And I have what are the original lots are only 60 feet wide on the lake. I have 3 of them. I have a 1,200 square foot house and 2 sheds. And I figured out that I'm using less than half of the allowable impervious surface. So that didn't seem very restrictive to me. And I thought if we discuss the overlays, which I know Mike was looking into, I think we need to be careful that we don't make things too complicated. So those were my comments.
Right, especially when you're getting into some of the larger lots farther away from the especially in the Lake Chaffee area. But if you are dealing, we're dealing with the Ashford Lake group mostly responding to us. Applying some of those setbacks, so limited setbacks, doesn't fit because they have been living under the RA zone and the larger setbacks. So it's hard. We're like making very, very specific, or we need to make very, very almost too complex or specific regulations for separate lots in the same area, if you will. Luther, your hands up.
Yeah, is it worth putting the question to Mike about
He has joined us, by the way.
Oh, okay. So part of what we do, certainly with special permits and certainly with other uses, is we do conduct review and approval of surface water and stormwater management and discharge and the like. I remember doing that in great detail when Cumberland Farms put their application forth, and that is actually part of our scope of work, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm just wondering if capturing some of that both here and then perhaps on a larger basis, talking about best practices for infiltration and surface water runoff and surface water discharge. It's actually becoming, if you talk to anybody at Eastern Highlands Health District, it's becoming a much more managed part of environmental concerns. Surface water discharge is really frowned upon for almost anything at this point.
Mike, I didn't know if there's anything on this that you wanted to present that, I don't know I didn't see exactly when you joined us. I tried to give a bit of a piece about some of the changes you made regarding lot coverage, part of the discussion. But was there specific items that you wanted to bring up?
I mean, I can just sort of give a quick overview of how the rationale. You know, I know that there's been a lot of discussion about an overlay and about the watershed as a whole. And, you know, we had a reg that had some fairly wide endorsement at the last meeting, and we sort of got to the 90-yard line, and there was concern that the design requirements to deal with the public input, which was we want to preserve water quality, we're going to be expensive for someone doing something very small. And so we're trying to toe the line between not adding a $5,000 engineering bill to someone who's adding a 10 by 10 deck onto their home, but also not just saying, well, it's too complicated to care about water quality and surface water, so we're just going to not deal with it. So what I tried to do was create a process by which certain things don't qualify, as you'll see, in the lot coverage calculation. I think that the idea of the drainage basin and the total watershed of these lakes, number one, they're two different lakes, they're two different watersheds. That's data we don't have immediately available. So that is a much more extensive process. Number two, we're looking to create a zone with this. This will have its own name, its own bulk standards, and we would not apply that to other properties currently within the RA, which may be 2 acres, but maybe within the watershed. Overlay zones are always an additional restrictive requirement. So you never use an overlay to dial back standards. You only use an overlay to add additional standards. So it would be totally appropriate for the commission to look at adopting an overlay as an additional level of criteria for properties within these basins. You frequently see that as in an aquifer protection area, right? You see them use that all the time. It would be the same thing. The other reason why I didn't go much further with this at this point is that there is another agency which reviews activity in proximity to the lakes, and that's the Wetlands Commission. And their sole charge is to look at the impact to a wetland or a watercourse. And so I felt like if we're going to go down the road of an overlay that deals with the entire drainage basin of a lake, we might want to talk to the Wetlands Commission to see if they're perhaps requiring a lot of the things we would ultimately write a reg about in their permit process anyways, right? They may already be checking a lot of these boxes. We just don't see it. So I thought that would be something down the road, but is not something that should go into the zoning reg itself.
Would that be a good place to bring in the Conservation Commission as well? Just if we're gonna, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're all rowing in the same direction. And as much as I hate that I just used a water pun when talking about a lake, you know, I think that we do have to sort of have a much more combined approach to how we're going to deal with this, because we're not going to be able to avoid the fact that there's going to be someone who's going to have to pay an engineering design bill at some point, and the town has to decide through these commissions what's more important. At some point, we have to decide whether we want to make those decisions, and people are going to have to foot that bill in the interest of water quality or not. And so I think that's a more global discussion and could include all of those folks.
Okay. So again, I think one of the statements that, or a couple of the statements that were made the last time around, just for edification and reminding, water quality itself is not the runoff. As Lisa said, the runoff and controlling the runoff, that does can fall within our purview, but the water quality itself is of the Wetlands Commission to deal with.
Or the health department.
Or the health department for that matter, right?
Yeah, and I think one thing that I wanted, I guess now's a good enough time as any to mention, is that, you know, there are maps, I don't know how up to date they are, of properties in these areas that have had issues with failed septics. And That's largely because these lots were created on filled wetlands. And so they don't support septic very well, and the septics fail, need to be replaced. No matter how much zoning we do here, if the soils are bad and the septics fail, that's something that we can't deal with here. You know, we're not that body. So that's why the Wetlands Commission is just as included in this.
So, okay. One quick thing I just wanted to check on regarding under the dimension requirements and the table for front yard setback.
Yep.
It's in here twice, so it almost tells me like I'm just too stupid to understand it. It says greater of 20 feet or the average distance between the front wall and the closest edge of roadway for all principal buildings within 250 feet on each side of the subject property.
So the idea is trying to come up with a viable front yard setback that doesn't require a survey, because these properties are on private roads. So the idea is essentially, I'm going to simplify it. You take the average distance between the house and the road for the properties on either side of you going 250 feet. So if your neighbors are, so that way there, what you know, if you have a bunch of properties were built around the same time and then someone who's developing a lot, you don't have houses that are 15 feet and then another house which is 5 feet or 35 feet. It's all contextually the same.
Okay, and so that's why you went for the average of those distances.
And if you look, at the figure, if you look at the figure at the bottom, essentially what we're trying to avoid is lot 7, where you have one lot that's situated completely in an irregular fashion as compared to the rest.
Or lot 6 for that matter.
Right. So we want you, right. So we want to use that contextual standard from your neighbors and have you do something that makes sense based on what that area looks like, rather than just setting a number and saying, we're going to use this everywhere, because these properties are so unique in the way they've been developed.
Okay, so that, yes, and I was looking at the figure. There were two things in here. One, I don't know if you can find a smaller type for what I guess is A, B, C, D and all that, because I even had my glasses on and couldn't tell what those were. And my algebra skills have disappeared after 40 some odd years. So dealing with that was another issue.
At least you had them to begin with. I can't say the same for myself.
Okay, so again, one of the statements that was said the last time, not to just go through recent history or anything, is that we probably need to do what we can do right now. And not to say that we wouldn't move forward with an overlay, but I think as Mike has indicated, an overlay is includes us, but we are not the be all and end all on it. It needs to include, and I think Luther, thank you for the input with Conservation Commission. We also, and I think Janet, you had said something before about, I'm sorry, I can't remember. Is it Jane Pinto?
Oh, Jean Pillow,
Pillow, I'm sorry.
water quality. I don't know what her title is, but she's has worked with she was the one who was monitoring the water quality along the Hope River.
Right. So it takes a village, and I think that's what we're going to need to do an overlay. And I think these regs here are as good as we are going to have right now to deal with setbacks, permitted uses, special permit, and impervious surface, giving as much as we can on the impervious surface as well as the height requirement. And was there feedback? I'm sorry, did anyone have something else they were trying to say? I wasn't looking at the screen.
I guess I have a question for Mike. Some of the properties have very high water tables, so you can't put in a dry well, or so would having the water go into a rain bucket system qualify?
So, yeah, I mean, I tried to provide some flexibility in the language for the low impact design, but one of the things that I did look at or was exactly that. And in the proposed language, the red text I've written, roof gutter / rain leader collection system that does not discharge runoff on top of the ground. So yeah, my idea with that is if you have something and you can show that you're not discharging hot water, which comes from the roof of a structure onto the surface, that it should qualify. And I think we should encourage people to reuse that water rather than pulling it out of their well. So the intent here is for you guys to have the ability to look at those things.
And the rain gardens are actually quite effective in a high water table setting as well.
I just put one in, yes.
So, Mike, if we go and accept the changes to the to move forward with the Lake District regs, do we need to have another hearing since we made changes?
No, I would say that none of these are more restrictive. They're actually less. And so I think it still deals with the same intent. We're just creating some additional level of clarification. If you wanted to,
Based on the input from the current hearing,
Right.
past hearing.
we haven't created a situation where somebody, would have been okay and now they're not going to be okay. There's not going to be anybody that's aggrieved and saying, wait a minute, you did this and I didn't realize it, because we haven't created some new process that didn't already exist.
Luther,
Is there a map anywhere that shows how far out this proposed zone reaches?
So the intent is that, and I've had them in a couple of the previous folders. I can send them to you. The intent is that this zone will cover the area of the original subdivision for both lakes. So there were two very, very old pre-zoning subdivision maps filed in the clerk's office for both lakes, which is how we got these 30 and 40 foot wide lots. And so the intent is for this Lake District to cover the lots within those subdivisions.
And as a follow-up, and I'm sorry, it's my first meeting in and I'm being so pesty. One of my other involvements here in town is with the Agriculture Commission. And I noticed that there's not a permitted or specially permitted agricultural use in the Lake District. And is that intentional or just through not seeing it? And is there a desire to prohibit agriculture in that zone?
I had some additional stuff in my very first draft, which I basically pulled from the original RA zone, and I had included farm stands and other things. But I think that the idea was based on the overall size of the lots. There was some discussion. They ended up coming out. I don't remember the specifics. I don't know if anybody else does, but I think the original language did mirror the RA zone.
I just am thinking in terms of if someone has a small garden or something like that, I mean, and runs afoul of a neighbor and is dragged in front of us for being in non-compliance because we're not allowing agriculture in a lake district.
So
Luther, this is Jerry Dufresne. Lake Chaffee, we have several deed restrictions. And I'll have to read it to see if you could have a garden, but not for commercial purposes.
But that says an association, or no, that's a deed restriction. So that's, yeah, I guess that's why I was asking if there's a map that shows the boundary of this area of impact.
It's on the May 10th meeting. And if you go to the
Yep.
files for May 10th, both maps of the Lake District.
Thank you.
There.
I can probably pull it up and share my screen if you're interested.
So they're all
Yep.
very small lots, Luther.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and Ashford Lake has a covenant as well. I'm not sure what it says about agriculture. I'd have to look.
Yeah, I just felt like it was something worth asking as to if that was done with intent or if it just wasn't looked at. Okay, so it just really comes up to the boundary of the large field that runs along North Road. I see.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm recalling correctly, the reason we started looking at this was to make the Lake District, these small lots, conforming, because as it stood, every lot was non-conforming in
Yep, and
comparison to our current regs.
yeah, like I said, the only reason I asked was just because it jumped out at me that we have that as a permitted use in every other zone. And I know this is its own zone and we're doing that with intent. So I just wanted to make sure that it was being done with intent and it wasn't just that it hadn't been included for some reason. Because when I go to bring everybody up to speed on the Ag Commission, I just want to be able to be accurate.
They might be a little concerned if they put a pig farm on a 60-foot lot, but with runoff.
And because it's not listed as a primary use, that simply means that the use of the property wouldn't be agriculture. It doesn't mean that they couldn't have a garden. It doesn't mean they couldn't grow agricultural products, because the primary use would be the single family home. So as long as the scale was appropriate, there's nothing that would prevent them from that type of a garden. They just, the use of the property would still need to remain single family.
Okay, are we good with that discussion regarding the agricultural use or having a small garden there? Okay. See section 7.
These are for both lakes?
These would apply to both lake areas, yes. Lake
Okay,
districts.
and so there's no viability for commercial agriculture at Lake Chaffee either.
Probably even less so, I would think.
They're all small lots.
Yeah, I think in one of Dick Williams' pieces, there was I want to say a 0.4 and then a 0.9 or 1.0 average acreage, something like that, between the two, Lake Chaffee, respectively, Lake Chaffee to Ashford Lake. Yes, Mr. Krieger, we don't usually open it up, but go right ahead.
Yeah, I have what it says on the Lake Chaffee deeds is said premises shall not be used for any commercial, agricultural, or manufacturing business of any kind. That's
Okay, very good. Thank you for the input on that. Appreciate that. Okay, so at this point, in order to, I'm hoping we can get this moved forward. In accepting the changes that Mike has put in for the lot coverage, and can I get a motion to accept the Lake District to move forward with the Lake District regulations?
Mark Schnoble, I'll make a motion to accept.
This is Janet. I'll second.
Okay. Thank you, folks. All those in favor of moving forward with the Lake District regs as we have revised?
Aye.
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 All those
Aye.
opposed? Abstentions? So moved. Thank you very much.
And Mr. Chair, are we pursuing discussions with inland wetlands about possible overlay areas or?
I
that-
will generate a letter in response to Mr. Berry and Mr. Panic at both lake associations with that intent of, again, this is the short term, and moving forward with, after discussions with the town selectmen and whether they need to bring in their public works or whatever, but exploring the possibility of an overlay zone for both areas.
Okay, thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you, Paul. Okay. Moving on to section B, 7 Oak Drive special permit for short-term rental. Again, we've had some input. I think Janet and Mark, I don't know if you want to express or if you're gonna toss it over to Mike to talk about some of the changes or some of the things that you looked at regarding the short-term rental application and those changes.
Jeff, if I could just jump in, I got an
Right.
email from the applicant on Saturday and she's asked to withdraw her application.
She has.
Oh.
Okay. Okay, so the pressure is off regarding the application. However, I think the changes we were looking to make would be beneficial. And if you want to give us some background on those changes, Janet and Mark, that would be great.
I don't know, Mark, you want me to talk
Yeah,
first?
yeah, it's fine. Sure.
And Mark does have a anecdotal story about this too, that I think is important. We, our goal is to keep residential areas residential, and the Ashford Lake Association Board does not want to have Airbnbs taking over the lake. So to deter people from buying up properties and using them as income property, we added that in the case of an unhosted short-term rental, such rental should be offered and made available no more than 3 times during any 6-month period. In no case should any one guest or rental agreement exceed 28 consecutive days. And that is the definition of short-term rental, is up to 28 days. We took out the difference between the RA zone and the business zone. And what else did we do, Mark?
Right, the first paragraph for Article 4B, Section 4, under A, subsection 1, we struck out A and B in the 4th sentence. So it says the zoning permit application must include either, we struck out in the case of lots in the RA zone, but left in the name of the property owner residing on the premises, or, and we struck out B in the case of lots outside the RA zone, the name and contact information of the property manager who must live or work within 2 hours of the site, and express written consent of the property owner for such temporary rental. Just to make it a little clearer.
Well, so previously unhosted rentals were not permitted. So we are permitting unhosted rentals, but they're limited to 3 times in 6 months.
Well, unhosted room rentals were not permitted under Section 3.
And we took out section 4B, section 3.
Correct.
Yeah.
That was unhosted. That was for room rentals, where it stated they had to be hosted, not unhosted.
Right.
But then Mike thought, because in the definition is where we had the 28 days, as well as no more than 3 times in 6 months. So Mike wanted us to move that into the body of the regulation, out of the definition. Correct, Janet?
Yes.
So what we're saying, or what you're saying, is that, I guess, excuse me if I'm not caught up on this, the short-term rental has been taken out of the RA zone? Allowable short-term rental, or just the language that we were working with?
No, this
No. Go ahead, Janet.
Oh, sorry. Short-term rentals are allowed. They're allowed everywhere, or
Right.
RA zone. And they can be unhosted, so a person can, not be living there. However, they can only rent 3 times within a 6-month period.
Got it. Okay.
So that we felt allows people to make a little bit of money. It discourages people from buying these up as an investment.
And Janet also reached out to the Lake Association to see if they would give any feedback, which they did respond to her.
Yeah, they agreed with us in discouraging the short-term rentals.
Okay.
Does this language change only apply to the RA and Lake districts? This would not apply to commercial district changes?
This has nothing to do with the Lake District, actually. This would be for the whole town.
It has to do with, right, RAs, what's allowed in RA zones.
Okay, because the copy I'm seeing from the shared files includes, in the case of the lots in the RA or Lake District zones. So it does call out Lake districts.
When this was originally written, we didn't have Lake Districts, so Mike added that so it would be clear.
Okay, I guess what,
That it covers both.
and my question was, is it only for those 2 zones? It doesn't not include commercial, it does not include interchange. It's specifically only for RA and Lake District.
Correct.
And from a consistency perspective, because I did look at that, we don't allow residential uses in those zones now. So it would be a little bit funky to include those because a single family home in the commercial zone now would be non-conforming. So that's why we didn't pull those in, or that's why I didn't on my end.
So, but hypothetically, an existing non-conforming house in a commercial zone could not have that function as a short-term rental.
Correct.
So Mike, since I think you stepped out for a minute. So did you want, what I took from our last email is you wanted us to move the 3 times in 6 months and the 28 days into the body of the regulation. And I sent you a proposed draft last Friday of language. I don't know if you had a chance to look at that.
So I thought I went through, and the red line which went out with the agenda hopefully reflects that. So there's an old number 3 that I'm proposing to strike, and then a new number 3 which says such rental shall be offered and made available no more than 3 times during any 6-month period, and in no case should any one guest or rental agreement exceed 28 consecutive days, which I think is the language that you guys did.
Yeah, for some reason it wouldn't let me open up that document on
Oh,
file online.
I can share my screen if you want to look at it.
Yeah, Mike, why don't you share your screen so we're all looking at the same thing?
Sometimes with like views and screens and browsers, if it's not the right, if you zoom in or out, it'll get you. Hold on.
And would the proposed Lake District be under Article 4B, residential zone, or would it be a new article, a whole new zone?
For the Lake
'Cause
District,
right now,
a new section.
okay, because right now short-term rentals is embedded within the residential zone article. So we'd have to think logistically, how does everything look in the overarching regs when we pull it together?
Yep. Okay, meeting materials, PZC. Proposed revisions to short term.
Well, it does reference, Doug, in the Lake District regs under special permit uses, short-term rentals in accordance with Article 4B, Section 4.
Oh, it does? I'll have to pull
Yes.
that back up and look.
Yeah.
So it is
And
referenced
that
under
might be okay.
number 2, special permitted uses. Hosted short-term rental.
Okay, I see that, Jeff. Got it.
Now, why just unhosted? Shouldn't it be hosted or unhosted? So shouldn't it be just in the case of short-term rental?
What, you're talking about new number 3?
Yeah.
I put that in there because I didn't get the sense that there was a concern about the hosted side because the owner was on the property.
Yeah.
We can add that. It's up to you guys. Because we don't have those restrictions for bed and breakfasts, I don't think. I'd have to check.
Because I think in the definition, didn't we have a maximum of 28 consecutive days under hosted?
Okay, so we could either add that so that it applies to everything, so that all short-term rentals have to cap out at 28, or we could remove from that section.
Right, because in the definition, we had a maximum of 28 days for hosted.
Did we add that in? Because I didn't have that.
I think it was always in. Let me pull it up.
No, it's not.
In the definitions, under short-term,
Short-term
that's where-
hosted.
It's just listed as generic short-term rental. The hosted and unhosted doesn't get in the 28 days.
Hold on. Unhosted says 28, says
screen's open.
well, since short-term rental says 28 days, I guess it was assumed that a short-term rental hosted or short-term rental unhosted would be no more than 28 days, but maybe that should be spelled out.
Okay. So do we have a consensus on this regarding the 28 days and hosted and unhosted? Or is that still up for discussion here?
Well, for the 28 days,
Yeah,
well, that's the definition of a short-term rental.
okay. So
So,
it applies to both is what you're saying.
It applies to both, but maybe we should add it in the definitions so that it's clear.
Yeah, it's very confusing that we have short-term rental and that we have short-term rental defined 3 different ways.
Mm-hmm.
That's very
And then we
Not clear.
regurgitate the definition. We regurgitate the definition in the regs itself. I thought we were trying to get away from that by having a definition.
Well, we did that so, we did that on purpose, Doug, so that applicants such as the woman who applied and withdrew, it would just be more clear for them rather than having go to the definition.
We're trying to move away from having any regulatory language in the definition. So the 3 times during any 6-month period, that really is a frequency type of standard. And we want to pull all of that out and include it in the reg. So I think that we can, if the commission can decide how it feels about the 28-day cap, we can probably remove just short-term rental and then maybe tweak some of the language for hosted and unhosted. And so we define the differences in what they are in the definitions. And then if we want to regulate them separately, we can do that within the reg or not, whatever you're comfortable with.
So was the intent that short-term rental hosted and short-term rental unhosted would be subsets of short-term rental in the definitions? And they really shouldn't have been standalone definitions?
Correct.
And is that something we should remedy?
Well, Mike suggested doing away with the short-term rental definition and just have short-term rental hosted and short-term rental unhosted.
And by doing that, you would lose any of the language that refers to the 28 days.
No, that was going to be in the body of the.
Well, you'd add it.
Yep.
to-
So all the language that refers to any time duration would be in the regulatory body.
Correct.
Because, for example, if we found someone that was operating that was not in compliance, I wouldn't say you're in violation of the definition of short-term rental. I have to cite a line in a verse. I think that we can pull that out, and I can, when we make changes to the section, we can clarify the definitions as well, so that all of this is in there and the definitions themselves become more clear, but we won't lose any of the regulatory framework that we have as far as the days and the caps.
But the 28 days is really is really an important part of the definition of short-term rentals. If I'm looking up definitions and it doesn't say 28 days, it's like, why is it a short-term rental, not a long-term rental? Who knows?
Can we not call out in the definition and say rental of a limited duration as defined under article thus and such of these regulations?
We wouldn't reference the section, but it's just like in the terms above with setback, the required distance between the lot line and the nearest building. We don't say what the setback is or that they're different per zone. We're just trying to make sure that when we use a term that there's clarity as to a short-term rental and what it is. So we can't help someone that reads the definition of a short-term rental and then doesn't read anything else, and they don't know that it's 28 days. But I think that the problem we run into, what we tried to fix with the last go around, is if you have criteria in the definitions which don't fall into the criteria that you evaluate an application for compliance under, that's when people get confused because they're reading the section and then there's this other piece that's in another spot. So I think we can probably transition these definitions so that we know what they are, but we haven't lost any of the regulatory meat. I'm pretty comfortable that we can do that in a way that makes the most sense.
Okay. So do you want to go back and make those changes effectively? And then come back?
Sure.
And then we can come back next month since we don't have the application hanging over our head. The permit.
Mark and Janet, do you want me to make those changes and send them to you, or do you want to make those changes and send them to me?
I'm comfortable with you making the changes, Mike.
I am too, yeah.
Okay, I will send you a markup ahead of the next meeting, and we can have it for them at the December meeting.
And I just realized I did a poor job on managing the agenda because we broke right into discussing the changes, and it should have just been the permit. So it should have stopped when Mike said that the permit had been revoked. So we've jumped on to 8, but we have to finish up on our unfinished business. I apologize on that. So we're clear there. We're all set on that. Moving on to the update of Plan of Affordable Housing. Mike, do you have any input on that?
So we got all the final documents back from the Department of Housing, so the town can actually make the request for the grant funds. So we're officially, everything is completed with the state. So we can make the request, they will provide the funds, and we can start, probably in earnest, either in December or January, with sort of forming the actual approach. But we're all finally got everything back from the state, so we're good to go.
Now we had talked before about hosting a meeting and inviting other potential stakeholders or other interested parties of our own housing authority, selectmen's office, potentially leading the leaders of the Board of Finance and such, to sit in on. I think you said you had some type of PowerPoint presentation that you've used, or you can develop one.
Yep. So I don't know if December is too short.
I think January might be a better goal for us, especially weather, holidays, and everything else. So yeah, maybe January, shoot for a January meeting. And should we have a special meeting later in the month as opposed to just after January 1st?
It's up to you, or maybe we can come up. Maybe at the next meeting, we can come up with the list of organizations that we want to include, and then we can set a date based on that. But I have a presentation that we can do, and we can sort of call it a community forum where we can explain the idea, what it is, the process, and we can also use that as a sort of a kickoff to what's going to be happening, so people will kind of know what to follow moving forward, since we may have a captive audience, and we can tell them about survey or whatever. Yeah, that'll work.
Would we be better off doing it outside of a regular meeting, as you said, calling it a community forum or something like that? Less restrictions. And
I think that
it's nothing official or anything either. It's just us gaining information from these folks and providing information to them.
I mean, based on the fact that we know that you all are available at this time, and we have this, we can rebrand the meeting as a community forum. And if we don't have any applications, that can be kind of how we deal with it. But if you want to have a special meeting, we can try to find a date for that too. It's just based on preference.
Okay, let's look at the group. Like you said, we'll look at the groups to invite and have a list put together for next meeting to go over. Please, if you think of someone that should be included in this discussion and made aware of what's going on with Plan of Affordable Housing, please pass that on to Mike or myself or to Alex for that matter, so we can try to include those folks. And again, giving them at least 30 days notice, maybe 45 or something into January would be great, and hitting the ground running for our December meeting so that we can provide that information or provide that invite to the interested parties. Okay. Anything else, Mike? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Luther.
I was just going to ask if that deck or information is available to new members so that we can bring ourselves up to speed.
I'd like, Mike, would you like to present it to us next time so that we can see it first, or would you rather not? Would you rather we didn't steal your thunder, or?
I mean, I have what we started with when I gave that presentation many, many, many months ago before we submitted the application.
Uh-huh.
But, you know, when I've done this before, I usually write the presentation based on who's going to be there. So
Okay,
once we come up with the list of who's going to attend, then I can, you know, I'll include or exclude certain things based on the audience. But I'm happy to share it with the commission ahead of the meeting once we identify.
yeah, or even if you have that that set deck that you had shared with us, we do have, Luther's a new member, John's a
Yep.
new member. So yeah, if you want to provide that, so Alex can send it out, or you can send it out to the group to get at least a preview of what's being discussed. And then, like you said, we can tailor that, add to it, or whatever, once we know the group, the attending group.
Yeah, I
Okay.
have it. I'm trying to see how big it is. If I can email it, I might be able to compress it into a PDF. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Luther.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so that being on the affordable housing as we move forward, we've basically reviewed the proposed changes to short-term rentals. Mike's going to make some changes. Mark and Janet will review and come back to us. Zoning officers report. Anything special, Mike? Are you tired of talking?
Nothing special. We've got a couple of making a little bit of progress on some enforcement items. We've had a lot of people come into the office with projects. We have, I don't know, maybe four different properties that are maybe 5 in various stages of evaluating potential commercial development or redevelopment. So maybe some stuff that comes before the board, some pretty actually interesting things later in the winter. So actually been pretty busy lately.
I did have a request of Mike. This is very old school because obviously everyone can access our regs through the new codification process that took place. But I did ask Mike to develop and produce new bound, or not bound, but new copies of the regs for all the members. And it'll be in a 3-ring binder so that we can insert new sections as we go along, as opposed to being a bound document. So do you think next meeting, Mike, we might have those?
Yeah, we just had to get the supplies. We put in an order for the supplies. So as soon as we get those, we'll start running them, and we can coordinate with the best way to get them out to folks. But it should be pretty easy to insert some of these things as we do these little precision updates. So we should have those much earlier than the December meeting.
Okay, well, that would be good if we could have them in hand for the December meeting. So if we figure out a distribution, whether it's a pickup or we send or whatever, that's great.
Yep.
Hey, Jeff, is that going to be for everybody or just the new members?
No, that's for everyone. All new members will start fresh with new bound. You can get rid of your yellowed dog-eared copy as I have here.
That are out of date. Way out of date now.
Yeah, my notes aren't the best in there. So, okay, that being addressed, I'm looking for motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Jerry
That's from
Dufresne.
Jerry. Seconded.
Janet, second.
Janet seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you all. Thank you, new members, for joining us. And again, thank you for your time. The town really appreciates it. And we'll continue to move forward. Take care. Be safe.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, thank you. Thank
Night.
you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.